What I really need, some kind of affection.
Greetings, everyone. This is Richard Solomon for Taking Care of Business, and we have an unbelievable show today. This is one of the shows where we actually have to have video to accompany the audio soundtrack. So we have with us today the Great Throwdini. Thank you so much for being on this show and for spending time. We're actually going to have an incredible show about knife throwing, the Great Throwdini, entertainment. It's going to be spectacular. One of the really cool things that we actually had in pre-production was this object. Could you talk about this? This is something quite special.
Yes, I acquired Harry Houdini's throwing knives. So it's a set of 3 or 4, and I have several upstairs in the showcase, and I keep one with me in my box on stage every time I perform. So a little piece of Harry Houdini's right there with me. Wow.
Now let's talk, for people who may not know, who was Harry Houdini?
Probably the most famous magician of all time. When you think magic, the first thing that comes to your mind is Houdini. He's a great escape artist and the man. That's all.
Well, he was known for sort of, the water chamber, and
water torture,
and being handcuffed and thrown into rivers and all these other kinds of crazy things.
Yes, he got out of anything. Didn't matter what it was.
Wow. And now this is part of sort of your personal collection.
Yes.
It must be incredible to have an unbelievable piece of history to hold in your hands.
Yes, I am honored to have that set.
So let's talk about this for a second. You're a knife thrower, and this is the knife that you use.
Yes,
and they're very different. This is heavier, or yours is heavier?
Mine would be heavier.
Oh, yours is much heavier.
Yeah.
What is this made out of?
Steel.
And this is made out of?
Steel.
Oh, but yet they feel so different.
Yeah, this is much thinner. This is thicker. There's less of this in the handle, whereas this is a solid handle right down to the bottom. That's a cork handle.
Now, did you design this?
Yes, I did.
Wow, that's really cool. So let's talk about yourself for the people who may not know. You're the world's fastest documented knife thrower, the world's most accurate, and you have a lot of awards, including the Merlin Award. So let's talk. And because this is all about shameless promotion, let's really just not hold anything back.
Well, I'll tell you about that first. The Merlin Award is presented by the International Magicians Society. The president is Tony Hassini, and he selects 1 or 2 of magicians' best performers in a certain year and has them in a category. So you'd have David Copperfield and Penn and Teller, and it goes on. And they're awarded the Merlin. And he had seen me perform at Monday Night Magic in Manhattan. That's New York's longest running off-Broadway magic show. It's in its, I think, 16th year now.
Wow.
And he came down with his crew, and they presented me this Merlin for, outstanding performance in the impalement arts.
Well, impalement, that sounds dangerous.
Yes. So it was during one of the performances, and then we stopped, and they gave me the award. And what I do, professional knife throwing, is referred to as the impalement arts.
Wow. Now, what inspired you to become a knife thrower? How'd that start? Because most people want to become astronauts or things a little bit less risky.
The long to the short of it. My real name is the Reverend Dr. David Adamovich, retired professor with a PhD in physiology, paramedic, pool hall owner, professionally trained chef, ordained minister, and in my spare time, I throw knives.
Wow.
So having said all of that, I was a professor for 18 years. I was teaching electrocardiography, for which I wrote the textbook for the course, electrophysiology, biostatistics, exercise physiology, and one of my students in the graduate class I was teaching electrocardiography in that class, and is a emergency physician. He was a marathon runner, and he was interested in exercise physiology. So despite being a physician, he took his master's degree in exercise phys, and he's in my class, and he introduced himself, and I said, "What am I going to teach you?" And he said, "From what I've seen you do so far, you could teach me a lot." So he was impressed with my knowledge of electrocardiography. We became friends, and he said, well, what are you doing at the university? Why don't you come out with me and join my emergency medicine practice, which is a group that is used by the emergency department, so that this group supplies the docs to the hospital.
Okay.
And so, the practice is basically administrative, besides having the docs in it. And I was with him for 5 or 8 years or so. And then he was selling the company, and it was time for me to move on. And I couldn't find a job. A wall full of degrees, all kinds of accomplishments, author, you name it, had it all. I couldn't find a job. So I did the next most logical thing. I followed one of my childhood passions, which was shooting pool. And I opened a pool room. It was called Doc's Billiard Emporium in Bayshore, New York. And within months of opening the pool hall, one of my customers comes out with a small 12-inch knife, pulled it out of his pocket and showed it to me. I had no idea what it was. Never saw a throwing knife in my life. And we stepped outside the pool hall, and he threw it and slapped it off a tree, and I said, let me try it. I threw it and stuck it, and I said, I can do that.
Yes. I got to interrupt because this is fascinating. At that moment, did you believe that knife throwing was something that was innate as opposed to something that you had to learn?
Absolutely innate natural talent.
Okay, so please
Which
continue.
I can go through, and perhaps we'll discuss it, an entire discussion on natural versus learned talents. But for me, it was a natural talent. And I stuck it. I said I could do that. And 9 months later, I was placing in a world championship.
Wow. Now, how did you learn what kind of knives worked for you? I mean, there must have been all kinds of practice and all kinds of experiments and things about balance and speed and distance.
There was a lot of junk out there, to say the least. And a lot of people use a lot of different knives, ranging anywhere from 12 inches up to 16 inches. And I threw them all, and when I felt a 14-inch knife in my hand at that weight,
this one.
I said, that's it. That's the sweet spot of a throwing knife.
This is the 5-iron.
Yeah, that's my bread and butter knife right there. It's 14 inches long. It weighs 12 ounces. It's 14 inches long. It weighs 12 ounces, and it's 1/8 of an inch thick.
Okay.
And to me, I looked and saw what other professional throwers were using. Basically came down to the same thing. The big names of the past threw a 16 or a 14 or 12, but of that basic design, which is called a diamond head. And I tried all the different lengths, and I came up with this 14-inch, shaped it like that, and that became the throwing knife for me.
So how did you hone your skill? Was it all trial and error, or was it some trial and error and some teaching, and was it also watching videos or, I guess, clips of the great knife throwers of the day?
Well, I'll back that up to the beginning. I started out in competition throwing.
And what's that? Is that accuracy, speed, or something else?
It's accuracy.
Okay.
You stand anywhere from 8 feet out to 25 feet, and you throw the knife for a half spin, a full spin, a 1.5, a 2, a 2.5, perhaps a 3 spin from further out, and you're aiming for a target round. And I went to Vegas for I forgot the name of the tournament, but it was the World Championship that year, and the gentleman running it is there with all the other throwers that have been in the competition for years and throwing all their lives. And I step in, I'm the new kid on the block. I was throwing 9 months. Nobody knew me. And we were all in practice, and I'm throwing my knives. And he tells everyone, stop, look at this guy. I don't know who he is, but he's the smoothest knife thrower I've ever seen.
Wow.
And he's right. I am the smoothest, and I'm not afraid to say it, because it's so easy and so natural for me that knife is a piece of me. and I can throw it, I can feel it, I just know what's happening with the knife. And I see the other guys throwing and they're struggling and they're taking all kinds of unnatural positions and doing all kinds of strange things with their hand and their arm. And I'm saying to myself, what are you doing? It's all wrong. It's just easy for me.
How much, for you, is it physics and sort of, mathematics versus sort of just gut?
It's gut.
That's it.
Yeah, it's feel.
Because what's interesting is a lot of people ask me, how do you do radio? And the answer is, I don't do scripts. We just run it. And it's sort of like, it's just one of those things that's just something that you have something in your comfort zone. So this is obviously in your comfort zone.
Quite.
Right. Now, do you ever watch the famous kung fu movies where you see the Chinese fighting stars? Did you ever throw those?
Nothing. I never threw anything. I didn't even throw a baseball as I was
No,
growing
I'm
up.
saying that once you started the competition.
No, once I started this
Yeah.
stuff, no, just stuck to knives, and I've thrown some spikes, tomahawks, axes, machetes, but not the martial arts stuff. That's a whole different ballgame.
What did you find as the greatest challenge when you're doing knife throwing, whether it's before an audience or with a target as a human being that you're throwing around as opposed to at? What's the greatest challenge? Is it psychological? Is it distraction? Compartmentalization? What is it that presents the toughest challenge?
I guess it's the pre-show thoughts.
Okay.
Because
like the winding, like going through your head?
Yeah, going through your head. I have to get through all the anxieties of knowing that what I do is dangerous, not for me, but for my assistant. And my prime concern at all times is my assistant's safety.
Sure.
And so before the show, I'm thinking, what am I doing this for? I'm going to go out there, I could hurt somebody, I can go from 0 to 0 in one knife. And, so I go through all of that. I think that. I don't ignore it. It becomes part of that pre-show thing, and then I come up with all the answers. I hit the fears, I respond to those fears, and I push them out of the way. And when it's time to go out on stage, all that's gone, and I just go into automatic mode and throw my best and perform.
All right, when we come back, I want to know, you teach knife throwing, and I want to know, can you really teach this? Because I don't know that I'm coordinated enough, even with 1,000,000 years of lessons, to really do what is so natural to you. But this is Richard Solomon. We're taking care of business. We'll be right back after this quick break.